right now.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to give a disclaimer, you guys, right now, that I'm not an attorney. John is, while he does have a law degree, he's also not an attorney. Anything that we talk about tonight about the TSR and CROA, this is our personal opinions. This is not like, I'm not trying to interpret the law in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to go off of some of the basic things that we all know, about the TSR. Again, I'm not going to read the laws directly. I'm not going to try to interpret anything because I am not an attorney. But we're just going to talk about a few of the options you have. We're going to compare CROA and the TSR and kind of how they work together, and talk a little bit about that and just the things you need to look out for compliance. We're going to talk a little bit too about just uh, some exceptions from the TSR to keep you in compliance. Things that we know to be true for the most part. And again, nobody has, even on some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, I want everyone to understand that the CFPB has not come in and sanctioned really anything, right, on the TSR, like how to be compliant. Here's what you have to do to be exactly compliant. So nobody really knows. Would you agree with that, John?
Sorry about that. I was
You
trying to
weren't
look for some.
listening to me.
What was the questions?
So I was saying the CFPB has really not sanctioned anything to do with the TSR. No, they haven't come in and said this is exactly how you have to operate to be in compliance. So we're just doing our best guess on some
Yeah,
of
I
it.
think the best, most recent guidance on that is the, CRC settlement. It's probably.
Yeah.
Um, they do have some, the FTC has some guidance also. It's been a while since I've reviewed it, but they even have some videos that you can watch, I think, on their website that talks about TSR compliance and things like that. But TSR calls out credit repair organizations specifically as one of the groups that are, businesses that are under the TSR requirements.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint and we will get into it. Let me get it queued up here. I do not know why my computer never wants to work on Zoom. Okay. Gonna see if you can see this on a full screen right now. Let me know if you see the full screen.
Yes.
Did it go forward?
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right. So just a little bit about us to begin with. I'm Stephanie Black, and my partner is Kim Moses, and we are the founders of Credit Butterfly Software. I have been in the credit repair industry for about 20 years, as Kimberly actually started the credit repair company with me 20 years ago. She left for a little while to do some other things. And then she came back and we created the software together. John, do you want to give a quick intro on your background?
Sure. I don't have a credit repair organization now, but I did start one, my first one back in late 80s, early 90s. So that's kind of how far back I go credit repair. And then, like Stephanie mentioned, I do have a degree in law, but I just went to school to learn more about contracts because I was doing contracts and my work with local government and decided I wanted to get more education. And so with that background and credit repair background, kind of got me into doing what I do now, and that is helping credit repair organizations with their contracts. Because a lot of people aren't experts in contracts, and that's okay because that's everybody can't be. So, kind of got me into the niche of specializing in state-specific credit repair agreements, and that's kind of how I met Stephanie through that process.
Yep. And John is amazing with the agreements that he puts together. So if you need a compliant agreement that's CROA compliant, he is definitely the go-to guy in this industry for that. We've also integrated his agreements into the Credit Butterfly software, which we're really, really proud of that. And we think that they're amazing. So John, again, is a wealth of information, so we're lucky he came on with us tonight to share his thoughts on the TSR as well. So we will just jump right into it. So basically, this is a regulation by the FTC, and it is to protect consumers from deceptive telemarketing, okay? So it's to ensure that credit repair businesses don't charge fees before services are completed, that they don't make misleading claims, and they operate in a fair and transparent manner. Okay, so for credit repair professionals like yourself, adhering to the TSR ensures that you're conducting business legally and ethically while avoiding costly penalties or legal challenges which could arise if you're not compliant with the TSR. So you also have to stay compliant with the other regulations like CROA in order to provide good, high quality, transparent services to your clients. So we're going to talk about both tonight. We're going to talk about like the differences between CROA and TSR and what it means to you. John, do you have anything you'd want to add to this portion of it before we jump into when the TSR applies? And John is on mute.
Sorry about that. I said you could continue. I don't have anything to add to that part of it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so when does the TSR apply? Okay, so if you're making outbound telemarketing calls or you're handling inbound calls that lead to a sale, so this is one of the important pieces of this, it leads to a sale or a promotional pitch, the TSR is absolutely triggered. Okay, TSR, if you don't do that, the TSR is not triggered, but CROA will still apply. So let's just talk about the main differences between the TSR and CROA. I'm going to give my little bit on it, and then I'm going to have John give his view on the differences as well, and see if he has anything different that he would like to share. Again, remember you guys that this is like our opinions on what we know or believe we know, and it's not a legal opinion by any means. Okay, so the key differences for the TSR specifically prohibits credit repair companies from collecting advance fees before providing services. Okay, so there's a 6-month waiting period that applies to the collection of fees after services are completed. Okay, so under the TSR, you must wait until 6 months after you've performed the services before collecting a fee. Okay, so this applies to any telemarketing-based communication, even if you don't speak to the client over the phone directly. Now, this is the part that I'm not all that sure about, and I wanted to ask John his opinion on this. So even if you don't speak to the client on the phone, if telemarketing methods are used, like automated calls or like online sales, the rule still applies. And John, can you give your bit on that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. So the other thing to consider is whether the client is an in-state client or interstate client, right? If they're out of state, which is interstate, the best practice would be to have that person sign a contract and sign up as a client before you even talk to them on the phone. because it's very gray area for how to deal with, what things you can say on a call with an interstate client. You have to be so very careful. You cannot induce a client out of state into an agreement over the phone. So I think
And what
some
about
were
in-state?
well, in-state is a little bit different. But what I was going to say is that if you're going to handle clients outside your state, one, you have to understand, and this is not TSR, this is CROA and state laws. You have to have a state compliant agreement because the law follows the client, right? So you not only have to follow CROA with every client, but every state client depends on which state they're in. You have to have a state compliant agreement. So it's important to make sure that um, with all of your if you're going to have out of state clients, that you have the system set up so that it handles everybody the same way. And it's just what to make it easier for you, because it's going to be kind of difficult sometimes, when you start getting calls and things like that, you're going to have to decide whether the client's in state, out of state, all that stuff gets kind of confusing. But I would try and figure out a way to set it up so that you're dealing with every client the same way, so you don't have to keep going back and forth about how you're handling your clients. Uh,
Yeah, super
so
good advice.
yeah, getting them to sign up as a client, sign the contract, so they've already, signed the contract before you talk to them on the phone. They have the waiting period that they can cancel in. So it's just makes you guys have to do a little bit more work to do a good introduction to your client in an electronic way, that you know walks them through the process, right? And so that they understand that these rules that apply to you, um, the government and the states have rules that you have to abide by, and this is the process. So
Right. So now CROA, on the other hand, CROA requires that credit repair companies provide clear and truthful information about their services, number one. To ensure clients are aware of their right to cancel within 3 days or whatever that state law might be, and to charge fees only after the services have been performed. So that's one of the main differences between TSR and CROA. So you can charge under CROA after the services have actually been performed without that 6-month waiting period. Whereas with TSR, you have a 6-month waiting period after the services have been performed. Okay, so that's the main thing. Now I can tell you with John, the main thing with CROA is that providing clear and truthful information about their services and making sure clients are aware of their rights. These are huge proponents of CROA, which John puts in all of his agreements. Okay, his agreements are 100% CROA compliant. It's got the cancellation forms in there, everything that CROA is recommending, or not recommending, demanding, really.
requiring.
Okay. We like to say recommend. We're just following it, because we want.
Yeah.
Okay. So CROA, yeah, there's no fee, there's no waiting fee once you have finished the services. You can just charge for that. If you choose to adhere only to CROA, okay, and not the TSR, then this could definitely leave your company exposed, okay, to some legal risks, especially if you engage in any form of telemarketing or use online sales tactics that would trigger the TSR regulations. So not speaking to the clients on the phone does not necessarily exempt you from TSR compliance. Okay, so there's other things to consider. Okay, because the TSR is very broadly defined. Okay, it applies to phone calls, but it also can be applied to any method of communication that could be seen as a telemarketing practice, including online ads, automated systems, and things like that. John, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, also you have to make sure you understand your state credit repair statute as well, because you're going to need to follow all three of them: TSR, CROA, and your state credit repair law, if your state has one, which most of them do.
Okay. All right. So to remain fully compliant, you really want to adhere to both CROA and the TSR. So just remember, if you're using telemarketing in any form, then you're definitely going to do that 6-month waiting period, unless you do some of these things we're going to talk about next. And John touched on it for a little bit, but we're going to go on a little bit more depth on ways you can not trigger the TSR. And that's on the next slide here. All right. So one way to not trigger the TSR is in-person meetings. Okay. An in-person meeting is actually a really good way to do it. So if you're doing business in your state, if you have a brick and mortar office or a meeting place, even if you do like the virtual offices that you can actually go to the office. What's that one called, Kimberly, that we do? What is that one
I don't remember.
where you can get the actual off? I can't remember that. I don't know why I can't. This is like went out of my head.
Regency or something.
Yeah. Is it Regent or something? You can go get a virtual office where they have meeting spaces, but you have to have it where they have an actual building where you can go and meet with the client.
Regis.
Yeah.
Yeah, Regis. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're great. We have a office for our credit butterfly with Regis. So if we want to meet with clients in person, we can do that. Okay, and you can go there and you can meet it. You can even do it by the hour. You can even do it. It's like really cheap too, you guys. It's like, I think it's like $300 and some, even if you want to have an office where you can meet there like anytime. It's not that expensive.
And it probably depends on where you live, though. I mean, if you live in San Francisco, I imagine it's gonna be a lot more than that.
Yeah, but they have it in a lot of different states too. So you can
Yeah.
just look it up. Just look up Regis and it's a good way to do it. So in-person meetings are not covered by the TSR. It doesn't apply. As long as you're not having your sales conversation on the phone prior to them coming in. Okay. And that's a big key piece of the face-to-face. You cannot talk about your product and services before they come in and meet with you. You can set an appointment with them. That's about it. Okay, so that you can talk to them. If they come in person, then you're good. You can just go straight CROA. Okay, you can discuss your services at the face-to-face meeting. You can agree on the terms. You can collect payment after you finish an in-person consultation. So the way that I've always used the in-person, and a lot of people that have done the credit action plan with me utilize the in-person, is that because we do what's called the credit action plan. So we create a very specific step-by-step action plan for every single client that we meet with for credit repair. So that is an actual service, right? That is a full service and finished as long as you complete it in that face-to-face. So you can charge for that when you're finished. Okay.
Only if they've signed their agreement and you waited the 3 days or however long your stay, right?
Correct. Yeah, you do have to, they have to sign their agreement inside of that office as well. John, do you have anything to add to the in-person? You're muted.
I'm muted again.
Yeah.
No, I think you explained it pretty good.
All right, perfect. All right, John, I'm going to give you the online signups.
Okay. So the online sign up is kind of just like being in person, except it's online, right? So you got to have your client sign up online where they're saying, I want to be a client. Here's my, you provide them with a contract and the disclosures. The disclosures have to be signed as well, both the CROA and the state disclosure if your state requires it, and your contract. So there's 3 signatures on that. And then my understanding is they also have to sign up for a payment method online as well, how they're going to pay for the service. Then once all of that is complete, then you have a client and you can start interacting with them on the phone and, continuing their service.
Right. So once they've actually signed that contract and have become your client, and provided payment information. Now, this is the one that's tricky to me because this feels weird to me, John. I'm going to be honest with you. Like,
I agree.
it seems weird, right? Because
Yes.
they have to provide a payment form, but you can't really charge them at the time because that's not CROA compliant.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of wonky.
So what do you do really? Do you just get the payment method, you wait to charge it until after you've done the consultation and so forth.
Right, because you can't charge until services are rendered. So,
Yeah.
but they've committed, this is how I want to pay for it. And so once, you've done the service, then you've already got their payment information. You can charge them. I don't understand why that is part of it, but, they included that as part of it. So,
yeah,
and I mean, it could have been,
strange.
it could have been, somebody else that had recommended that and not FTC. I don't know. It's just kind of an odd one.
Yeah, I just find that to be really strange too. So yeah, so collect a payment form, but do not charge that at the time of them signing up online until after you've conducted the consultation. And that'll keep you compliant as far as we know. Okay. So those are the main things. So I'm going to just go over a few other things that apply to the telemarketing sales rule and really CROA too, because they really kind of work together in a way. They just have the different fee prohibitions. So it's the advance fees, obviously. We talked about that. The prohibition on like misleading claims. So this is more talking about like the spirit of it, right? And let me get to the next slide. More like talking about the spirit of the law. No false claims, okay? Don't make false claims or misleading claims about what your services can achieve. I think this is an important thing to remember and consider when you're doing credit repair. So for example, claiming to guarantee that negative items will be removed from a credit report or promising a specific credit score improvement is totally prohibited. Okay. You want to try to keep that kind of verbiage out of your agreement. John can help you with that. You want to have a really accurate description of services. That's another thing John does really well in his agreements is the scope of services is very well laid out. Be very transparent about the services that you offer, how much it's going to cost, okay, and the results that can reasonably be expected. All right. You cannot exaggerate the benefits of your credit repair services. I cannot say that enough. Do not exaggerate claims. Do not say you're going to get a 50-point increase or you could get a 100-point increase unless every single client that you have, every single one, 100% of your clients have achieved that. Okay, you cannot say that. John, what do you have to add to that? Because I think this is a really important section.
Yeah, I would also add that you should not have a guarantee in your agreement. And you shouldn't have a refund, portion, state in your contract that you have a refund policy, because you should have a no refund policy, but you can apply a refund policy on a case-by-case basis. Although I do recommend you should always refund your client, I just think that you got to be careful about both of those things because it could trigger, regardless if they're a TSR client or not, it could trigger you to have to wait until after the term of the agreement before you can collect payment. Because if you're saying I guarantee you're gonna have a 100-point increase, which no one should ever do. Then how is the client? Should the client have to pay until they've reached that 100-point increase, right? So, stay away from that. Stay away from refund policies. Just say you don't have a refund policy, and don't make any promises.
So let's talk about that a little bit because I do have a refund policy. You did my thing we did put a refund policy in there. Our refund policy is super broad. It's basically if you're not satisfied with the services, you get your money back. Period.
Yeah, it is broad, and it's one of those things that it's depending on how it's worded, it can be interpreted differently, and could be a gray area. But yours doesn't say, I'm going to increase your
Right.
thing
Because if you're not
100%,
happy,
or,
yeah,
right.
if
I'm
you're
not going to remove 6
satisfied.
things, or
Mhm.
something like that. So
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting to me. I've always found that to be interesting about because it kind of does imply something when you have a refund policy, right? That you're going to achieve a certain result.
yep.
So I get it. It's one of those odd things to me again.
Yeah.
The other things, clear and accurate disclosures, always have a written agreement, a very clear written agreement outlining the terms of your services, include the scope of your services, your fees, cancellation policies, and timing. Okay, on everything. The right to cancel. This is a definite CROA thing. Your clients have to be informed of their right to cancel, and it has to be clearly stated. It has to be in the agreement in duplicate. Okay, that's for CROA. Just in general. And I think,
Stephanie,
yeah,
Clay was wondering if we're going to go back and discuss the third-party payment.
yeah. Well, I'm going to go back and talk about that for just a minute. So the third-party payment services, this is just can be a little, there's nothing saying this is actually compliant. Okay, I'm going to put that right out there. There's some precedents with debt settlement in general that where they use this type of method to collect fees for waiting for the TSR, like to wait for payment. So one thing that you can consider doing, and again, no one knows if the CFPB will think this is okay or not okay. It's a little controversial, to be honest. There are third payment processing services like SAS, which they will collect the fees for you during the waiting time. So they'll collect the fees, they'll all be sitting there, but your client actually controls the money until it's released after the 6 months. So if they're not satisfied after you do the services and they want their money back, they can just get it. They don't have to pay you. They do control those funds, but they are collected and they're waiting there. So if they're happy with you and everything's fine, then after the 6 months goes by, then you can collect the entire 6 months of the fees that's sitting there. It's not escrow. It's a special service account. There's a fee to use these accounts. I think it's like anywhere between $8 to $12 a month for them to collect the funds and hold them for you. So that's another possible, and I say possible. John, give your thoughts on this because it's a possible way of making sure that you actually get the fees that you're entitled to.
Yeah, my understanding is if you set up a trust account, right, that's a third-party trust account, you have no control over it. Client puts the money into the trust account, like their monthly payments, or when people say, can I charge up front, $1,200, it's like, no, but if you have a trust account, you can have your client put the money in the trust account, you just can't touch it. And they have to decide whether the service was, adequate, right? So they can contest it probably. I don't know. I've never had a trust account, because I've never needed one, but that is one option if you don't want to take, monthly payments, but you can't take, the money to your, into your account. It has to go to a third party trust account that you do not control. Third party controls it.
Yeah. And the consumer controls those funds the whole time too. They have to have control of the funds as well as the trust. So that is a possibility. So that if you want to talk on the phone, like if you want to be on the phone, talk to your clients, then you can just wait for the 6 months, and this gives you a little better chance that you're actually going to get your money at the end of that 6-month waiting period. Okay.
Yeah, you just can't touch it until after that 6 months. I mean, depending on which state you're into, because Ohio is 60 days for their contracts. They have a maximum 60-day contract period with their state laws. So it would be 60 days for Ohio, but
Oh, that's actually good to know, because yeah, if you're on, so there's 2 people on this call right now that are in Ohio that I know
Okay.
of. So let's talk about that. So if you had only a 60-day contract, when that contract ends, your 6 months would start. So you're only waiting 8 months really for your money.
right, if they're a TSR client, yes.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you talk on the phone. So that's actually better than 12 months.
True.
It's a 6-month
True.
program.
Having to wait for your money is kind of an inconvenience, but if you're looking at, I mean, there are benefits to that, if you're, they have, if you have them pay into a trust account, so you're doing the service and they pay into a trust account. The only way I think that they could say, well, you can't take that money is that if you didn't do the service. You can show that you did the service, right? Because you have the letters, you have the copies, because you're required to keep copies anyway. You have the communications you have with your client stating, here's your letters, we sent these out, this is it, we did this evaluation. Every month you should be touching base with your clients, so you have a record of providing those services to them. And so at the end of the day, they can't say, oh, well, you didn't do nothing for me, I'm not allowing the money to be paid to you. Plus, in your agreement, you should have a dispute resolution clause, so that if there is a dispute of an alleged breach by the client or yourself, then there's a way to adjudicate that breach. So.
And the trust account also, part of their requirements is that you actually send a new credit report that last month to prove that you did that their credit, everything that was promised was done, and it still was there 6 months after you completed it. So like if you disputed a bunch of items and they were all removed and then 6 months later they all came back, that would be a real problem. So.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of waiting that 6 months.
Yes.
Yeah. Doing those little sweepy things and then they all come back on. That kind of deal.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and good record keeping, know that especially with CROA, there's something called the consumer credit file rights, that you have to have in your contracts. The first thing that has to be signed with a separate signature. You do have to keep this on file for every single client for 2 years. Okay.
And some states require longer.
Do they?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. I'm learning something new today. What do you even know the states offhand, or would you have to look them up?
I could tell you in a second, but there's a few of them that have a little bit longer retention period. Most of them are two years.
And those, again, you guys, are state by state requirements, right? Like,
yes.
Those are special state requirements. CROA says 2 years.
Yep.
Which is federal, but your state is going to trump that, and you're going to have to do whatever your state says.
Right. So a state can say you have to keep them longer. They cannot say you don't have to keep them as long, if you get what I'm trying to say. So a state can't say, well, CROA says 2 years, I only say 1. They can't do that, but they can say CROA says 2, I say 3. They can do that. Let's see, 2 years, 4 years. So California is 4 years. Florida is 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. See, so
For the
there, so it's,
consumer credit file rights?
yeah, that you have to keep all your records of your work, your file, your employee file. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, everything,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just
So
the
the
consumer credit
contracts, the
file rights.
disclosures, and all of the documentation for 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Kansas is 5 years. Louisiana's 4 years. See, so it's very important to know your state law
Yeah.
credit repair statute, because they may be more restrictive, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing that they can do is make your cancellation period longer. Like California's 5 days. CROA is 3, but California's 5. So California can make it longer.
Okay. Well, Kimberly, I think we should create a document on just the consumer credit file right, like how long you have to keep your documentation for every state.
Well, that sounds fun, Stephanie.
I think that does sound fun because that's so important, and I don't think anybody has that out. Like that would be a good
that is
thing
important. I
for
didn't know
us to
that, so
share.
that's a great thought. Maybe
Yeah,
John.
a great thought. Kimberly's like, I'm not doing it.
What is she gonna do? Other people. Yeah. John, what about is that available?
Well, John's gonna help us with that, hopefully.
All right.
All right, I'm signing everyone up for that. All right, so TSR payment restrictions. I think Kimberly kind of touched on this a little while ago. You know, no fees before results, and those results have to stick. You know, that's kind of the whole purpose of that. Collecting payment after services have been completed. And then the third-party payment account, we already covered that. So some of the benefits of TSR compliance, because there are benefits, it's not all bad, guys. It's not just difficult. You can avoid costly fines. That is a bonus. That is a huge plus. Okay. Not get sued by the CFPB. So we want to stay in compliance there, or the FTC. Building client trust, like you can advertise that you're compliant. You know, that's a good way to build trust with the consumers out there, that you are operating compliantly, you're showing integrity, and that is going to help. And people appreciate that. The people that I have talked to about the waiting time, when I've talked to them on the phone and told them they're gonna have to put their money in the trust account, blah, 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 because we're talking on the phone, they were so appreciative of that. They were like, wow. They said they just felt really comfortable after I had that talk with them. Because I was a little scared at first, to be honest with you. I thought people were going to be like, oh, great, you know, I can get my money back if I don't like what's going on. But really what it did was it just made people feel more comfortable. And they felt good about it. So, and definitely a reputation boost. A compliant business is going to stand out from the crowd, right? You're going to definitely stand out if you're compliant and you are showing integrity in your business model.